Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy and you're watching The Morgue, where we lay out the MMO industry on a slab and poke at all the shiny bits. Now today's a very superhero-y edition where we're going to don our capes and tights and take to the air with the latest news from DC Universe Online and how the recent outage by Sony's networks have affected the future of this once promising title. After that, we're going to be taking a look at the new announcement from Atari that they intend to divest themselves from the creators of Champions Online, Cryptic Studios. And last but not least, we're going to be taking a look at some of the disappointing news to be coming out from behind the scenes of Marvel Universe. Before we get into any of that, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the concept of feedback. First of all, we're going into our third episode here, and I got to tell you guys, the viewers of this show and our new fan base we're growing here are great at giving feedback. Really enjoying all the things that you guys have to say. The downside, unfortunately, is that I haven't been able to respond to you, all of you in kind. So in order to address this, I'm going to be starting a new thread on show-specific feedback over at jupitercolony.com. Therein, I'm going to address two of the primary points of concern that I've been receiving as common feedback. The first of which is that the dark name and theme of this show don't seem to be fitting with the hopeful and insightful content of the show itself. In response to this, I'm going to paint you a little bit of a picture on why this name was chosen. Not here, though. I don't want to take up all your time during the show just to talk about myself. That's not what you're tuning in for. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about over on Jupiter Colony is the concept that a lot of people have said, Jeremy, you need a co-host. Well, no, I don't. Come on. I'm awesome. But my response is a little more thorough than that, so I'll give you the full details over at Jupiter Colony. However, before I get into today's news, I do want to mention on the subject of co-hosts that I'm going to be starting a program of inviting correspondents onto the show. These correspondents will be in charge of a certain story or perhaps an entire title, in case there's any specific story that either slip my radar or simply require more expertise with a particular game than I actually possess. If you would like to be involved with this correspondent program, send me an email and we can start a dialogue on whether or not we can get you involved with the show. Shoot those notes on over to MMOrgue at jupiterbroadcasting.com. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get into DC Universe Online. At this point, anybody that's been following the gaming industry news already knows about Sony's major foobar that happened over the past month. On May 2nd, they shut down the network that controls access to all of their active MMOs. It took almost 2 full weeks to get this system back online. It's been estimated at this point that downtime might have cost Sony as much as $200 million. And this is just after a fiscal report that came out a month prior stating that their previous year's loss was a massive $3.2 billion. Lost. Yes, that was with a B. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the specific details about this. This is kind of an old story at this point, and you can get more thorough information on it by watching other news sources. What I want to talk about here is how this has affected one particular title, DC Universe Online. Now, why this particular title? Well, first of all, it was a little close to my heart. I'm a big fan of superheroes, and when this game was hyped, I was hyped. I was excited to play this game and a little disappointed with how it's all turned out, as were a great many other people. For a game that has already been suffering many different woes, this outage has had a major impact on its future. But let's back up one step, because you see, just days prior to Sony Online's outage, the executives of the DCU project had to announce that they were going to implement a major server merger. Now, server merges are never a good thing in the MMO industry, because it paints a picture to your fans and anyone else following the title that you don't have sufficient population to support the infrastructure that you once had in place. And while many server mergers in the past have been something like these 2 servers becoming 1, well, in DCU's case, it's actually 20 plus servers becoming 4. And that's about as bad as it can possibly be. Now, I will say that this might not have been entirely motivated by a lack of population. There are many technological changes going on behind the scenes implemented in what they're calling their mega servers that actually sound like a good move for the game overall. However, the motivation to actually make these mergers would not exist if they had sufficient population to support the infrastructure they began with. You see, the primary motivation for setting up these mega servers is to address the concept of queue times. Within the world of DC Universe, there are only 2 overland open adventuring zones, Gotham and Metropolis. Any progression that you want to make outside of those zones is done through a queue system which sends you off into a separate instance. And every one of those requires you to be part of a team. What this means is that in order to progress your character, you have to join these queues. And at this point in time, the queue times have been so atrocious that many players have been sitting in them for hours with nothing better to do than sit around and wait. The primary reason for this being lack of population. So, with the new mega servers, they're connecting the back ends of all of their separate servers into a single backbone so that every player on every server will be joining the same queues. Alongside this, they're implementing what they're calling phasing technology, but which actually sounds more similar to the instancing technology used in Cryptic Studios titles Champions and Star Trek Online, wherein multiple copies of the same world run in conjunction with one another in order to ensure that no particular area is ever overrun with population. And as much as this might sound like a good thing for the people that are still playing the game, the fact that it's happening at all means that not many people are playing the game. This announcement is not the first troubling news to come out of DCU in the recent weeks, and I'm not even referring to the outage. In the past 3 months, there have been 2 major executive replacements among the personnel that head up the DCU project. Both of these replacements were made from within and did not involve either a promotion or a new hire. Instead, it was existing executives taking on additional responsibility without leaving anything else behind. This sort of move is made in corporate environments where you don't have enough money to support either a promotion or a new hire. As if that on its own weren't enough bad news, you'll recall back in April that Sony already laid off hundreds of employees, including many that were attached to the DC Universe project. These 2 moves together pretty much solidify the argument that DC Universe is not on solid financial footing. And need I remind you about the $3.2 billion loss from last year? So now we're faced with a situation where a network outage might have just exacerbated the situation and made it even worse. You see, MMO gamers tend to be the types that like to play their game every day, maybe every other day. You cut them off for 2 weeks and that's likely to break a habit. And there's a good portion of them that will not return. In addition to that, there's the concept of consumer confidence in your product itself, which is a fancy corporate way of saying that people don't like to get jerked around. Now, Sony's a big company. They can take some lumps. They can absorb some losses. A potentially profitable situation that's not currently making them money could be sat on and waited for. They have enough additional investments and enough additional projects bringing in money that taking a few lumps along the way is not going to immediately kill the company or those particular products. However, Sony is not known for being patient, and they have shut down non-profitable MMOs in the past, most notably Matrix Online, which at the time of shutdown still had thousands of active subscribers. But it's not all doom and gloom. There is a little bit of good news that's come out of this, and that is that this outage seems to have frightened the SOE executives into actually stepping up and talking to their community. As many of you may be aware that have followed the MMO industry in the past, Sony has kind of taken a stance of always giving their audience only enough information so that they can guess what's going on. They're very big on secrecy and mystery, and not making promises that they might not be able to keep. Well, that's not quite the case anymore. In fact, you take a look over at the official forums for any of Sony's active products now after the outage and the reactivation of the network, and you will see them literally littered with dev postings, not only just talking about random everyday events, but also talking about things that are in development or things that they would like to be in development down the road. This departure and complete shift in their attitude towards their community is a very welcome change. It's a little upsetting that it took something so major as this outage to kick them into gear, and I hope that it's something that continues. As if Sony's outage and financial losses weren't enough bad corporate news for one episode, the next story I'd like to cover with you is Atari's recent announcement of their intention to divest themselves from Champions Online creator Cryptic Studios. Now, before we get into my speculation and opinions on this matter, I would like to actually come out and address some things that I've seen commented on across the internet and I feel need to be addressed. Call it rumor crushing, if you will. I just want to shed some light on the situation. The first of which is that Atari has only announced their intention to divest. No actual departure from Cryptic Studios has at this time been completed, and there's no timeline as to when that potentially will be completed. Secondly, and I think this is worth noting primarily to people that do like to speculate on this sort of matter, is that nowhere in their announcement did Atari mention that they're seeking a buyer for Cryptic Studios. which to my mind means only one of two things. One is that they're only announcing this intention in order to scare their investors back into line, or two, they already have a buyer on the line. And the third bit of rumor that I'd like to address is the fact that this is going to lead to the demise of their current projects. Down the road, who knows what's going to happen, but at this time, it's important to note that Atari and Cryptic Studios have announced no intentions to perform any sort of layoffs or project cancellation. That is important to note because Atari did take the move recently to massively reduce the workforce of one of its other studios. And if they were looking to do the same with Cryptic, it probably would have already happened. Now, with that out of the way, I'm ready to tell you exactly what I feel about this, and I'll just say it right up front. Atari's being stupid. I think they're making a bad decision for a number of different reasons. One of the primary motivating factors in Atari making this decision is that they've decided to move to what they call a more casual gaming market, doing web games and mobile platforms. Throughout Atari's history, they have a reputation for making moves that are seen to make them a buck quickly. And right now in the mobile gaming market, it is much easier to create a product with a much lower development budget and a much tighter development timeline, meaning that for less money, you get a product faster. But that's only true right now. Just as we've seen PC games evolve over time from being one-man shops at one point up to the point that they're now making $300 million budgets that take years and years to produce. The mobile and the casual gaming platforms are going to continue to evolve, and the more money they make, the more money will be invested in making more competitive projects in the future. Meaning that while getting into the mobile and casual gaming market right now may seem like a good idea to make money, right now it is not a good long-term investment unless you have the capital to continue to evolve with the industry, which Atari has never shown themselves to be interested in. Additionally, casual gaming, web gaming, mobile gaming, these are not platforms that tend to build brand recognition or avid fans, or build up your press or hype around any particular product or your brand in general. In fact, the only games that have managed to do this are the ones that spend a lot of money and resources in making themselves known. And the ones that have become household names like Angry Birds and Farmville are a tiny fraction of 1% of the overall market that you're competing with. Now, the other reasons that I think Atari is making a bad move actually focus on Cryptic itself. First of all, there's the financial aspects. As I said earlier, this whole intent to divest seems like a way for Atari to try and reclaim some financial stability. But if you look at their statements, they say right there within it that Cryptic Studios has been one of their most profitable ventures. They also state that although they filed a $17.3 million loss in the prior fiscal year, this most recent has only been a $7 million loss, a difference of $10 million profit improvement. If they continue to forecast that forward, even half of that, they're almost back in the black. And that is without taking into consideration the fact that Champions Online only went free to play within Q3 of last year, which by all current accounts has been a major financial windfall for that particular project. And all of these financial improvements by Cryptic have been done while another title of theirs has been under active development and earning no profit. And the last reason I think Atari is being a dumbhead over this is the Foundry. Cryptic Studios has developed the best user-generated content tool currently available within the MMO market. And while it's currently only available for Star Trek Online, they have developed it in such a way that it can be plugged directly into the Cryptic engine and will become a core component of Neverwinter and is likely to also be eventually incorporated into Champions Online as well. The concept of user-generated content has kept projects alive for years, not only increasing their profits over time, but also building name recognition, brand recognition, and loyal fans that will stick with that studio for a long term. Some notable examples of this have been Counter-Strike, Unreal Tournament, Neverwinter Nights, and many, many others, all of these which are still alive with active modding communities despite the original lifespan of the game being so far behind us. When you put the power of creation into your players' hands, you are not just creating content. You are also fostering creativity and community involvement, and if you do it in the right way, then this creation tool becomes the core of your game. And to be frank, I think that Star Trek Online, at least, is doing it in the right way. And Cryptic Studios' future plans for the Foundry only seem to further reinforce this concept. Now, all that being said, I'm only one man. I'm not going to be able to prove to Atari that they're making a bad decision. So I guess the die is cast, so what does that mean for Cryptic Studios? Well, as I see it, they have two major choices here, the first of which is to attempt to go independent. The second of which is to find a new publisher to live under. Now, admittedly, there's a little bit of gray area in there, but it really boils down to one or the other. So I'll address the independent idea first. The sad truth of the MMO industry is that no developer has ever managed to survive as an independent over the long term. In 2007, Blizzard was absorbed by Activision and EA bought up BioWare. And even Turbine Entertainment, which for a long time had been the gold standard of indie MMO developers, was eventually bought out by Warner Brothers in 2010. Furthermore, up until this point in time, no studio has ever managed to successfully separate itself from its publisher without going under another publisher's wing. In fact, it seems as though every one of them considers this prospect so risky that they'd rather just dissolve than try it at all. For these reasons, I find the idea of Cryptic going independent to be very unlikely. But with the current state of Cryptic and Atari, it's not likely that the price tag would be entirely out of the realm of reason to go independent for a time and then eventually become a part of another publishing company. So, whether a purchase by another company is immediate or long-term, I do see that eventually being the outcome here. Now, who would actually like to buy Cryptic Studios? Well, to be frank, I feel a little uncomfortable actually speculating on that subject here on this show. I'm not a financial analyst, and even though I keep a keen watch on the MMO industry, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. However, I will point you to a couple of articles that have been published over at MMOrpg.com, both of which do an excellent job of putting forth many of the options that exist. The first article discusses about many of the publishing companies and other such entities that might be interested in the Western markets, and the second article talks about the same thing in Eastern markets, which are frequently neglected when we talk about the buyout or the shutdown of Western studios. So check our show notes for each of those links. I will leave you with one bit of speculation, and that is, as a fan of Star Trek Online myself, I've been seeing it mentioned a lot in the community that many of those fans would like to see Cryptic Studios purchased by CBS itself. Now, CBS is not currently a player in the MMO gaming market, but they have such an online presence that has recently been improved that this is not entirely outside of the realm of possibilities. Keep in mind that only recently they signed on a licensing deal with Netflix to get much more of their content online, and they entered into a licensing agreement with a second MMO in the form of Star Trek Infinite Space. So clearly CBS is interested in the online space. Whether or not they're interested enough to buy Cryptic Studios remains to be seen. One last little bit of insider tip is that I have been hearing rumors that we may hear a major development on this story as soon as June 1st. And since Star Trek Online and Champions Online are very close to my heart, you can bet that I'll be covering those updates here on the Morgue. So stay tuned for more as the story develops. All right. Enough corporate politics and fiscal analysis. Jeez, can we just talk about a game now? All right. How about Marvel Universe? That's right. The first bit of details have been finally released about this game, and I got to tell you up front, most of them are a little disconcerting. A lot disconcerting. I'll start with one of the lesser notions that they're putting forth, primarily because, well, I just want to rant about this. They're attempting to claim the title of, and I quote, the first ever AAA free-to-play MMO in the Western market at the time of launch. Really, guys? Color me completely unimpressed. First of all, you can't claim a title like AAA when you don't even have a product to show us. There has been not one single screenshot, a bit of in-game footage, no feature announcements, other than the one that I'll discuss a little bit later on. There's been no timelines for betas or releases or anything. What is there here to lay claim to? What it really comes down to is this just sounds like more empty hype from a company that already has a track record of disappointing us on their titles. Jumpgate Evolution, anybody? How many times do they use the word epic in a single trailer for Jumpgate Evolution? And have we seen anything other than timelines be continually pushed further and further back? The truth of the matter is we don't actually know if that project's being developed at all anymore. So why should we buy any hype that they have to put forth at this point? All right. Ranty pants away. I'll get off my soapbox. Let's talk about something that they've actually started to tell us about this game, and I'll tell you exactly why I hate it. So I'll just come out and say it because you're probably going to hate it as well. Marvel Universe will not contain any character customization. All right, so I painted that in kind of a negative light. You see, the reason that there won't be any character customization is because you, as a player of Marvel Universe, will be playing as the iconic Marvel heroes. That means heroes like Wolverine, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, all of these will be at your fingertips. Not clear exactly how, but that's kind of got a cool ring to it if you think about it. I mean, DC Universe kind of went this cheap cop-out way where you can play as those legends, but only in limited time PvP matches. But if you actually wanted to be Batman, well, you're completely out of luck. I could see how a lot of people would find this actually intriguing. And to take it one step further, Secret Identity, the studio behind Marvel Universe Online, has stated that this gives the game a more epic feel where nobody feels like a sidekick. Side note, another bit of an empty claim because in Champions Online, I don't feel like a sidekick. In fact, I've even got a nemesis that's got his own minions in base. Name me one sidekick that's got that. All right, but we're talking about Marvel Universe. I think we can all see the primary downside to not having a robust character customization in a superhero game. To date, this subgenre is actually characterized by the ability to create the hero that you want. Pioneered by Cryptic Studios customization on City of Heroes and City of Villains, and then further enhanced in Champions Online. Even though DC Universe's customization was a little bit of a step back, eliminating it entirely is such a gross oversight for this subgenre that it sounds like complete crazy talk. And if this is really intended to be an MMO, how many Wolverines and Hulks are you going to be running past on a single server? And if there's only limited to one per server, then how truly massive would this MMO be? And what about progression? I mean, let's say you want to play as Spider-Man, but you have to start at level 1 and learn how to shoot webs? Well, how do you explain the fact that Spidey's been a superhero for decades now, and he should already know how to do this stuff? As far as I'm concerned, eliminating the concept of character customization in an MMO is nailing shut your own coffin. Doubly so for superheroes. The only way that I could potentially see this as coming across well is if this is not actually an MMO. If this is just a robust version of X-Men Legends or Ultimate Alliance with a great matchmaking and online lobby system, A+, those were great games. But if you're talking about having persistent characters with progression, you simply can't do that without the ability to create your own heroes and build the avatar that you want to build. Now, despite poo-pooing on Marvel Universe up to this point, I do want to point out that there has been one really great silver lining in all of the gray clouds that have so far come out over this title, and that is that the stories behind Marvel Universe are actually being penned by none other than Brian Michael Bendis, who, if you're unfamiliar with him, could be called the godfather of the Marvel Ultimate Universe, and is the creator of some of the most critically acclaimed story arcs ever to be seen in comic books, including House of M, Avengers Disassembled, The Civil War, and The Secret Invasion. All of these were Bendis' creations. Now, he claims to be writing stories for Marvel Universe that will be retelling the classic stories from the Marvel IP in new ways that will allow you to make choices along those characters' paths to progress your version of your hero down a unique series of events. Well, honestly, that sounds pretty cool. I don't have much else bad to say about it. Bendis has never really done anything wrong as far as I'm concerned, with the possible exception of killing Hawkeye, but I'll let that pass. One further note is that between Bendis' involvement with Marvel Universe and the involvement of R.A. Salvatore with Cryptic's Neverwinter project, this may be setting an actual precedence within the MMO industry to get acclaimed writers to flesh out the stories and the plots that we're treated to as gamers. And I don't see anything wrong with that. In fact, as video games become more and more robust in the realms of storytelling, I can foresee this being an industry that more and more writers would be interested in becoming involved with. And we, as gamers, would only reap the benefit. Man, this whole episode has just been a gigantic downer, hasn't it? I thought superheroes would be a happy, peppy subject of conversation. Well, maybe we can reel it back into the realm of fun stuff next week. On next week's episode, I'm going to be finally sharing with you all of the great feedback that we've collected about Rift, as well as some of my own thoughts on the project. And after that, I plan to discuss with you two separate major players that may be stepping into the MMO arena in the very near future, 2K Games and the BioWare studio behind Mass Effect. So until then, everybody, play smart, and may all your loots be epic. Good to go. Oh, Firefox 4 is here! Why is that popping up right now?